Hey everyone, Robert here, author of Expansion Mastery, the practical guide to living a fully engaged life. Are you ready to live life to the fullest? Are you ready and willing to transform yourself and your life from ordinary to extraordinary? Are you ready to start enjoying this incredible adventure we call life? Welcome, my friends, to the Fully Engaged Life. Welcome back to the show, my friends, and welcome to the 17th practice, the 17th challenge from my book, Expansion Mastery. I appreciate you sticking with it and tuning in to engage in these practices. So this is the 17th overall practice or challenge, and it is the fourth challenge in the esoteric section of the Earth level. So this one is entitled Feng Shui, the Flow of Nature and Natural Energies. If you look closely, you can see how this one is going even deeper than the previous challenge practice. The previous was dealing with living in harmony with nature, the natural cycles and rhythms of nature. And now we're going into the very energetic flow of nature itself and how we can live in harmony with that. So the idea of this is to use these earth practices to connect us to nature and help us protect our humanity from this technocratic world that's being thrust on us. This allows us to live as we were meant to live, to experience this life as we were meant to experience this life in a very natural and fulfilling manner that allows us to thrive as human beings in this experience. So if we look at this Chinese term of feng shui, or the Japanese interpretation of feng shui, this offers an incredible amount of insight into the idea of energy flow within our personal living and working space, as well as the environment around us. Becoming more in tune to this can allow us to then live more plugged into the natural flow of energy all around us, and even prosper because of it, to become more calm because of it, to create more inviting spaces because of it. Now, this is one of those areas that we get into, and I'm always careful to caution people because you can end up going a little too far with this and become a little foofy. There's a lot of new age aspect to feng shui. That is not what I'm going to share with you in this practice. What I'm sharing with you is the natural flow of energy that is all around us, that permeates all things, that is part of all things, and we are going to learn how to go with the flow, to be able to feel it, to recognize it, to actually work in harmony with it, to become one with it, as we were meant to do. So as you get into this topic, just a word of caution, be careful that things don't get carried away and you step off of the foofy side and get pulled into that. There's nothing foofy about this idea. It's a very old practice. It's been around for a long, long time, and there are very practical aspects to this. So if we look at things using the example I gave in my book about how major companies often battle one another using specific architectural designs that are meant to cut the flow. This is really a very real thing, and there are documented results that come of it. I think the case in point that I read somewhere, it's been a long time now, But there was a building, a skyscraper building, and this company was flourishing, and then another company decided to create another building next to it, and they made it in sort of a triangle, so it had like an edge or a blade edge pointed right at their building. And people started to get very uncomfortable there. They had health problems. They had a lot of anxiety. They couldn't continue working there. Profits were then diminished, and different things like this ended up happening. And they found that that's what was creating the issue. Before that building was put there, they never had that sort of thing happening. So these things aren't just coincidence, and the people didn't even know. They weren't aware, that this was actually the effect until later. The people that created this other building in this sort of triangle or wedge shape actually knew what they were doing, and they did it on purpose, and it actually had the desired effect. Isn't that incredible? I find it amazing that things like this matter. Another example would be if you are entering the training floor of a martial arts school, of a dojo, and there are swords in a rack on the wall, and the tips, the edges of those swords are pointed at you as you walk in. You might walk in and get an uncomfortable feeling. You might not even want to hang around, and you may not know why. As opposed to if the handle was facing you, you feel more secure, more confident when you walk into that space. These things really matter. I used to test this out with students, with visitors in my martial arts school, in order to validate the truth of this. And believe me, it worked. It made a difference. Maybe not on everyone, but certainly on a majority of people. Another example I share in my book to bring this home a little bit is understanding the idea of clutter in our home. Obviously, if you have a cluttered home, it shows that you also have a very cluttered mind, and that your body is probably not really relaxed and free and allowing the natural flow of energy in it either. And if we have a cluttered room in our home, or an entire home that's cluttered, there is no natural flow of energy in it, because you have all the clutter creates these blocks. So you have all of this blockage in there, just like you could in your physical body, just like you could in your mind. And people don't feel very comfortable walking into a place. They feel like it's too crowded, that they don't fit, that they don't belong, that they're not really welcome. See, so if you have a room and you remove all of that clutter, and there's a natural flow for them to walk through, a natural path that they walk through, so the furniture is set up so they can walk nicely and then into an inviting space, that's around the fireplace or something like that. It's a very different feeling. And living with your external environment in clutter like this can actually cause a degree of clutter in your mind, and clutter or blockage and stagnation of the vital life force or energy within your body. All of these things are reflections of one another, and they interact with one another. It's kind of incredible to think about, isn't it? I remember years ago when we used to walk on malls a lot, there was a particular clothing store that my daughters would shop at. And this particular clothing store was very, very cluttered. You walked in and they had just racks of stuff everywhere. They had boxes of stuff, bins, they would call them, to go through. And it was just stuff everywhere. There was no organizational scheme. There was no flow. Surprisingly, or not so much, the only flow was actually up to the counters. So you felt like you were being herded, and then there was a nice flow from the counters out the door. So when you walked in there, it made you feel like you had to walk through the swamp of stuff. And it was so distracting. You couldn't focus on anything. You couldn't find anything. But then if you managed to walk over by the registers, You felt that you were clearly being given the okay to get out. You've got your stuff now, move out, get out. And there are several stores like that. Even later when we moved, my wife and I noticed on a mall another shop like that was the same way. And just walking up to the store and standing in the doorway, we noticed this uncomfortable feeling. You could get a little jittery or a little tense or just really uncomfortable. And it was easy to understand why. It's like, wow, all of that clutter in that store is just absolutely terrible. And we never went anywhere near any of those stores again. So do these things matter? Absolutely, they matter. Incidentally, those are a couple of the stores now as we are in this retail apocalypse, right? And all of these retail stores are suffering. These are a couple of the stores right now that are in bankruptcy, and I'm not surprised. So again, see, we have real world validation here. This is something real. It's the same way if we look at walking into your living room. And as soon as you walk into the living room, the sofa is facing into the room with the back of the sofa towards the entrance of the living room. If you walk in and someone has their room set up that way, you feel like you're being blocked out, like you're not really welcome, like you don't really know if you should go in there or not. How do I get around? These feelings are subtle, but they're there. If we are mindful, they're very obvious to us. And it's the same as if you have an office and you have your desk turned so your back is to the entrance. That's not very beneficial. You're on edge all the time. You're stressed more all the time. Why? Because it goes against our natural instincts as a human being to have our back to the door. And it isn't a matter of being paranoid. It's a matter of we are blocking the flow of energy in that space. My wife and I set up our living room to have a very specific type of flow, but it's very warm, it's very inviting, very relaxing, and very comfortable. And that's the feeling that we want to have in our home. And we want others to experience that when they come here to visit. It was the same with the dojo I had in Michigan. People would come in and they felt very welcome. They felt very comfortable. Everything felt very tranquil. And I had everything, the display counters all set up in a very particular flow. I had tea tables set up with a particular flow. I had the entrance onto the dojo floor and the training floor itself set up in this way. So there was a very nice comfortable flow to the energy as anyone came in. And people that didn't even train, they just came in to buy something retail or what have you, or to watch a class. They even commented on how wonderful it was in there. This place feels nicer than any of the places I've ever went to visit. I've got tons of compliments on that. So a lot of people notice these things, even though they may not be exactly certain what they're noticing. They still have a sense of feeling, and that sense of feeling is brought on from the energy. So here are some things that I recommend. I recommend having a decorative theme for each room or a central theme running throughout your entire home. Back when I was younger, didn't know any of this, lived in a very cluttered house. I was never a person of great clutter, but the person I was with was. And there was no theme to anything. Everything was just, okay, here's this sofa, here's this chair. Now they don't go. The art didn't match. Nothing really matched. It was just a hodgepodge of stuff thrown together. And that really disrupted the flow, caused a sense of uneasiness and confusion. Where if you have a certain theme, you have a certain idea with certain colors and things like that you're going for, then you can create a much more comfortable and inviting atmosphere. And that also aids in becoming a far more calming atmosphere for you. And of course, the theme should be meaningful to you. It needs to be mindfully done. So what is it that you really enjoy? What is it that you're attracted to? What is it that would allow your living space to be an expression of you? That every time you walk into that room, you are stricken by what is there in a good way, where you're like, oh my God, look at that piece of art. I can't believe that I have that. I love looking at that. Every time I walk into the room, I love looking at that. Or a certain piece of furniture, or the fireplace in the corner, or the autumn decorations that you put up, whatever it is. They should be things that make you feel good when you walk into the room, and yet you should have this nice flow through those things. It really helps the overall quality of the energy in the room if you feel good about the things that are in it. If they're significant to you, meaningful to you, then you really enjoy that much more fully. So if you recall, in the first section, the exoteric section of the Earth Challenges, that challenge number 4 was loving where you live. And we talked a lot about we have to love where we live, our home and our town and our state and our country and things like that. But this is taking it deeper to an energetic level so that you enjoy your living space. You enjoy the place. You probably spend more time than you do anywhere else. So what I recommend is that you begin by getting a good book on the subject of feng shui. Be discriminative and make sure it's not foofy. Find one that has a sense of practicality to it, and you'll get something more real that way. But you can go online and search it as well. However, I recommend purchasing a book or two for your own personal library and having them on hand for reference. My wife and I have several books on this subject covering a wide range of it so that we can get different points of view and establish a far more effective and total understanding for this deep subject. And then I would recommend beginning with one room in your house. The living room is always a good one to use, but you can do it with any room that you desire. So what you want to do is pick a single room so you don't get overwhelmed by having to do the entire house, and become more sensitive to how it feels. Maybe even ask guests, how do they feel when they come in? Do they feel invited? Do they feel as though it's easy to come in and sit and relax? Or do they feel blocked? Do they feel things that just put them on edge a little bit? So you can get some nice feedback from your family and friends. Don't get angry with them or upset with them at all over their feedback. You want their honest feedback. So if they're being honest with you, then you can take that and use that. It's actually quite helpful. So appreciate them if they're able to share that. Then you should take a piece of paper and write down about 10 things you notice about the room that could be improved. Use the guidelines of feng shui in order to do this, as well as your own personal feeling. If you can't feel these things yet, then rely on the book. But as you become more sensitive, you will be able to understand these things and feel them for yourself. Once you write those things down, then set about moving. Maybe you say, yeah, I've got this piece of furniture and the back is to the entrance. It just doesn't feel good. The people sitting there probably don't feel good. I know when I sit there, I'm a little on edge. Then you tip the chair, right? Put it on an angle or move it all together so that there's a nice flow through the room. And then once the changes are made, again, ask friends and family, how does this feel? Does this feel better? Sometimes you may not even have to ask them. You just invite them over and they walk in, and you'll know by their compliments. If they feel compelled to go, wow, this is nice, this is better, the way you have this set up, even though it may appear that it's just a judgment, that judgment may be coming about from feelings that they have. So again, it's very valuable feedback for us. And then you can pay attention to primarily yourself, but then others, and notice what happens mentally and emotionally when they arrive and once they spend time in that space, and then when they leave. They should, as well as you, should feel massive improvements in a sense of tranquility if the room is set up correctly. You should just feel like a natural flow, like you can just move through there freely and easily, and it feels inviting, it feels comfortable, it feels just serene. Then you're getting things the way that they should be, right? That's the feeling that at least we are going for in our living room. Maybe you want a little bit more formal feeling in yours. You can set that up too. But we want something very warm and relaxing, cozy, and that way we get to enjoy that space, and we want to enjoy those types of qualities. Once you learn how to do this with your home, then you can do it with your office or whatever workspace that you have available. Sometimes we can't change these things. Sometimes our back has to be to the entrance, so there's just nothing we can do. But we can sit on an angle a little more often so that we're not always feeling that stress from our back facing the door. And then you can look at other ways to improve your workspace in order for it to reflect success, prosperity, and whatever other qualities you are looking for that particular workspace. Even what you put in that room matters. Like if you put some flowers in a room, you should pay attention to the type of flower, what it represents, the feeling that it gives, and the colors of those flowers. And then put them in a strategic place in the room. See, all of this revolves around mindfulness, right? That's easy to discern, isn't it? So then you can create, again, the type of feeling you want within that space. During certain holidays, I send bouquets of flowers to the hospital where my wife works. And I'm very careful to choose various arrangements that have a certain feel, a certain color. I get light colors, nice colors, colors that fit the occasion, but yet are also conducive to a sense of healing and a sense of being calm and relaxed, so that it helps all of the nursing staff as well as any patients that might be walking up and down through the hall. But think about that. Isn't that pretty sweet? I mean, we can do something nice like that so that the color and the arrangement and the type of flowers are very purposeful. They're mindfully chosen to fit the environment as well as the occasion. And then the staff that works there can enjoy those things. And it also helps to add to the enjoyment and well-being of the patients that are on that floor. So you see, everything possible, it's not always possible to have everything, but everything that is possible for you to mindfully place in a room that you have the ability to actually control, you can mindfully arrange in such a way and mindfully decorate in such a way that it benefits yourself. It benefits anybody that interacts with that environment. It can even benefit the success of that business. Think about it, right? If you had to go to the hospital, would you rather go to a hospital that was a very sterile, cold environment, or would you like to go with one that was a little bit warmer, more inviting? Which one would you feel more comfortable in? Take a look at what they've done in hospitals with birthing rooms, right? Instead of having just cold slabs of a table that the woman giving birth had to lay on in this cold room with a curtain around it, no, what did they do? They decorated these rooms to make them feel more homey, to feel more comfortable, because it's so much more beneficial to the woman as she gives birth. It's more beneficial to the baby to enter that kind of energy instead of that cold, sterile environment, see? So sometimes people catch on to these things, and whether they understand it's an aspect of feng shui or not really doesn't matter. Although we are going to be mindfully aware that it is. So oftentimes you will see a business doing very well, enjoying a lot of success because of their ability to tune into the energies this way and accommodate their customers, their clients, their patients, whatever clientele they have. So this idea of feng shui is referring to wind and water. And these things flow, right? The flow of a stream. If we look even at the ocean, there's our currents underneath the water, within the water. If we look at the sky, of course, we have weather patterns, and we have, the wind blowing in this direction and that. And see, so the term is referring to the flow of wind and water and the cycles of interaction between wind and water. And that's what they use to create this term to describe the idea of feng shui. So we want to make sure that we have a certain flow within our space. We don't leave the space just empty, and we don't have it too cluttered. There's a nice flow, nice movement, and nice things within the space that make you feel good about the space, that can make others feel good about the space. Feng Shui provides us with a wonderful way to interact with our living space, our workspace, the environment around which we live. And by doing so, it allows us to become more sensitive to nature, more in tune with nature, and more mindful in the process. So this is a really, really fantastic process that can make all the difference in your life and certainly allow you to start living a fully engaged life. It is my hope that you can see how important each one of these aspects are individually, as well as how they interact with one another, and how each one allows you, each one of these practices, challenges, once you successfully engage them and interact with them, they allow you to live a little more mindfully, and a little more mindfully, and a little more mindfully. And in that process, you begin to live more fully engaged. Living fully engaged is not just some buzz phrase. It is an actual outcome of the practices. Through these different practices, we can live fully engaged. That's a formal, authentic term. It's not just a buzz phrase that I used or picked up or just made up my own meaning for. This is actually a real thing. And this is what it takes to achieve that. So again, this is very practical. We're not taking a foofy view where it's, well, this is what it means to live fully engaged to me. See, I'm not necessarily sharing with you what it means to me. I'm sharing the term and the practices that support that term according to authentic spiritual systems. All I'm doing is sharing my personal experiences with them with you so that you can then incorporate them in your way into your life. But the practices still have to be done that way. And you have to attain this type of thing, such as a mindfulness. You have to attain this bit of awakening of mindfulness in order to start living fully engaged. It's not just something you can make up and believe that you're doing it. That's delusion, right? So we want to be very careful of this, especially as we deal with things like feng shui, because they can tend to get a bit obscure, and in so being, they can cause us to become a little foofy with some of this. So remember that this is a very real, practical, authentic teaching. All of this is. Everything I present is. And then it's up to you to incorporate it effectively into your life. So please make sure to visit me at www.expansionmastery.com. Grab your autographed copy of Expansion Mastery, and you can get this incredible ebook. I've gotten such tremendous feedback from this ebook, Reinventing Yourself Through Realignment. It's all newly revised and expanded. Check that out. You need this information. And I'm working diligently on the Breath Mastery program. I was working on it before recording this podcast, and I'm really getting these things around. So once we get the first one, the others are going to be coming out kind of rapid fire. So be ready. And I highly encourage you to get the entire set of these. There's going to be 7 modules, and it's going to be life-changing. And once again, thank you to all of you who are sharing this material. I appreciate that so much. I encourage you to keep that up so that together we can help others to receive authentic spiritual practices and to begin living a fully engaged life at a moment in history where it is needed desperately. So keep hitting the subscribe. Encourage others to hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Hit the likes and comments and all of that stuff on the social media. Share as much as you can. And don't forget, Christmas is coming up before too long. And a signed copy of Expansion Mastery makes a fantastic gift. Until next time, my friends, I wish you the very best in your practices and your life. Take care. And in case you haven't been told lately, I love you. You are loved. And I hope you are living the life that you desire and deserve.